They say the most dangerous person in a corporation is someone with nothing left to lose. I used to think that was just dramatic nonsense until I became that person. My name is Rebecca Stone, and this is the story of how HR telling me I was easily replaceable became the most expensive mistake in my company's history. It started on a Tuesday morning that felt like any other. I'd been working at Global Tech Solutions for 5 years, climbing from junior analyst to senior project coordinator, consistently exceeding every target they set for me. I managed the European accounts that brought in 40% of our annual revenue, and I did it so seamlessly that leadership seemed to forget I existed. That morning, I walked into Linda Martinez's office with confidence. Linda was our HR director, a woman who wore power suits like armor and had a smile that never reached her eyes. I'd prepared for weeks for this conversation, armed with spreadsheets showing my performance metrics, client retention rates, and revenue generation. I was ready to ask for the promotion to regional manager that had been dangled in front of me for 8 months. "Rebecca," Linda said without looking up from her computer screen, "close the door and have a seat." I should have recognized the tone. Cold, dismissive, the same tone she used when firing people. "Linda, I wanted to discuss my career trajectory here at Global Tech," I began, sliding my prepared portfolio across her desk. "As you can see from these numbers," before I tell you exactly how Linda's next words became the catalyst for the most spectacular corporate downfall I've ever witnessed, could you take a second to hit that like button and subscribe? Because what I'm about to share will show you how one moment of corporate cruelty can backfire in ways that seem impossible until they unfold right in front of a $50 million client portfolio. Trust me, you need to hear every detail of how one woman's arrogance destroyed everything she thought she controlled. Linda didn't even touch my portfolio. Instead, she leaned back in her chair with that practiced corporate smile and delivered words that would haunt her for years to come. "Rebecca, I'm going to be direct with you. You're easily replaceable. We appreciate your adequate work, but you seem to be overestimating your value to this organization." The words hit me like ice water. 5 years of 60-hour weeks, 5 years of saving deals that incompetent account managers had nearly lost, 5 years of building relationships that kept our European division profitable, and I was easily replaceable. "I'm sorry," I managed to say, my voice steady despite the rage building in my chest. "Look," Linda continued, her tone becoming even more condescending, "you do your job fine, but there are hundreds of people who could do what you do. You're not special, Rebecca. Don't let a few good performance reviews go to your head." She pushed my portfolio back toward me without opening it. "Maybe focus on being grateful for what you have instead of reaching for what you haven't earned." I sat there for a moment, processing the sheer audacity of what I'd just heard. This woman, who had never managed a single client relationship, who had never closed a deal, who spent her days in meetings about meetings, was telling me, the person who had personally prevented 3 major client defections in the past year, that I wasn't special. "I see," I said, standing up and collecting my materials. "Thank you for clarifying my position here." As I walked back to my desk, something crystallized in my mind. Linda had made a fundamental error in judgment. She assumed that because I'd been loyal, because I'd never caused problems, because I'd always been the team player, that I was somehow trapped here. She had no idea what I was actually worth or what I was capable of. That afternoon, I started making phone calls. You see, what Linda didn't know, what none of the leadership at Global Tech knew, was that over the past 5 years, I hadn't just been managing accounts. I'd been building genuine relationships. Real friendships with people who ran some of the most influential companies in Europe. People who trusted me personally, not Global Tech. My first call was to Marcus Weber, CEO of Weber Industrial Group, our largest European client. Marcus and I had worked together on 7 major projects, and I'd saved his company millions in logistics costs with solutions that our so-called senior leadership never would have thought of. "Rebecca," Marcus's warm German accent came through the phone. "How are you, my friend?" "I'm well, Marcus, but I have some news. I'm considering leaving Global Tech." There was a pause. "This is concerning. You are the only person there who understands our business. Where are you going?" I'm exploring options. Independent consulting, perhaps. Rebecca, if you leave global tech, we follow you. You know this, yes? Your company without you is just another vendor. With you, they are partners. That was exactly what I needed to hear. My second call was to Elena Rodriguez at Continental Logistics. Same conversation, same result. Then came James Morrison from Morrison & Associates, followed by Dr. Sarah Blackwood from Blackwood Consulting. Each call revealed the same truth. They weren't loyal to global tech. They were loyal to me. By the end of the week, I had something that Linda Martinez could never have imagined. A client portfolio worth approximately $52 million in annual revenue that was personally tied to my relationships, not to the company. But I wasn't done yet. I spent the next 2 weeks documenting everything. Every process I'd developed, every relationship I'd built, every innovative solution I'd created, all of it carefully cataloged. I also reviewed my employment contract with the kind of attention to detail that had made me so good at my job. Here's what I discovered. Global Tech's non-compete clause was laughably weak. It prevented me from working for direct competitors for 6 months, but said nothing about independent consulting or about clients choosing to follow me voluntarily. Their legal department, it seemed, was as incompetent as their HR department. 3 weeks after Linda's easily replaceable speech, I submitted my formal resignation letter to her office. But this wasn't just any resignation letter. Attached to it was a document that would change everything. A detailed transition report that outlined exactly which client relationships were personal versus institutional. The report was professional, thorough, and devastating. It showed in precise detail that 73% of our European revenue was tied to personal relationships that would likely not survive my departure. I even included email excerpts, carefully selected and legally obtained, showing clients expressing concern about working with global tech without me. I hand-delivered the resignation to Linda's office on a Friday afternoon. She was on a call when I walked in, and she held up one finger in that dismissive way while she finished her conversation about weekend plans. "What's this?" she asked, barely glancing at the papers I placed on her desk. "My resignation letter. Effective in 2 weeks, as required by company policy." Linda's expression shifted from annoyed to surprised. "Resignation? Rebecca, if this is about our conversation last month, maybe we can discuss—" "Oh no," I interrupted with a smile that probably looked as cold as hers had been. "You were very clear about my replaceability. I'm simply taking your advice and being grateful for what I have, which, as it turns out, includes some very interesting career opportunities." "What opportunities?" The first hint of concern crept into her voice. "I suggest you read the attachment. The transition report should help you understand what you'll need to do to maintain client relationships after I'm gone." I turned to leave, but paused at her door. "Oh, and Linda, you might want to schedule a meeting with Gerald Torres in legal. You're going to need him." I didn't wait for her response. That weekend my phone rang constantly. Linda had clearly read the attachment, and the panic had begun. First came a call from my direct supervisor, then from the European division head, then from Linda herself. Each conversation followed the same pattern: confusion, disbelief, and finally, desperate attempts to negotiate. "Rebecca," Linda's voice was strained when she called on Sunday evening. "I think there may have been some miscommunication about your career path here. We'd like to discuss new opportunities." "Linda," I interrupted, "remember what you told me? That I'm easily replaceable? Well, you're about to find out how right you were, or weren't. This is about money, isn't it? We can discuss a raise. This isn't about money. This is about respect. Something that apparently can't be purchased with your corporate budget." Monday morning brought chaos. I arrived at the office to find Linda waiting at my desk with 2 senior executives I'd never seen look worried before. The European Division VP, Michael Chen, looked like he hadn't slept. "Rebecca," Michael began, "we need to discuss this transition report. Some of these client relationship assessments seem concerning." "Concerning?" I kept my voice level. I thought they were realistic. After all, Linda made it clear that anyone can do what I do. Surely replacing those relationships should be simple. "Let's not be dramatic," Linda started. "Dramatic?" I pulled out my phone. Marcus Weber called me at 6 a.m. He wanted to confirm the rumors that I was leaving. When I said yes, he asked for my personal contact information so Weber Industrial Group could maintain our partnership after my departure. Michael's face went white. Weber Industrial Group is worth $12 million annually. $12.7 million, I corrected. And that's just the current contracts. The pipeline I've built with them is worth another $8 million over the next 2 years. I continued, enjoying the growing horror in their expressions. Elena Rodriguez called an hour later. Continental Logistics is also interested in maintaining our working relationship. That's another $15 million in annual revenue. Should I continue, or would you like to check with your other easily replaceable employees about their client loyalty? The meeting that followed was surreal. Linda, who had been so confident about my replaceability, now sat silently while executives who had never acknowledged my existence suddenly wanted to discuss my valuable contributions and future with the company. But it was too late. The wheels were already in motion. You see, what I hadn't told them was that I'd already incorporated my own consulting firm, Stone Strategic Solutions. I'd secured initial contracts with 3 of my former clients who were eager to continue working with me independently. By the time Global Tech realized what was happening, I already had a business that would generate more personal income than my corporate salary ever could. The final twist came during my last week. Linda called me into her office one more time. The same office where she'd delivered her easily replaceable speech just a month earlier. "Rebecca," she began, and I could see the desperation she was trying to hide. "We've discussed this situation with senior leadership. We're prepared to offer you a substantial promotion, regional manager, with a 30% salary increase and equity options." I sat back in my chair, the same chair where I'd been dismissed and humiliated. "That's interesting. What changed?" "We've reevaluated your contributions to the organization." "You mean you've realized that losing $52 million in revenue might reflect poorly on your management capabilities?" Linda's professional mask finally cracked. "This is about ego, isn't it? You're willing to damage the company because your feelings were hurt?" I leaned forward, and when I spoke, my voice was steel. "Linda, this was never about ego. This was about value. You told me I was easily replaceable without understanding what you were replacing. You assumed that loyalty meant weakness, that quiet competence meant invisibility. You made a business decision based on arrogance instead of data." I stood up and straightened my blazer. "So I made a business decision too. I decided to work with people who recognize value when they see it. People who understand that relationships aren't built on corporate letterhead. They're built on trust, competence, and mutual respect. If you stay, we can fix this." "Linda," I interrupted one final time, "some mistakes can't be fixed. They can only be learned from. Maybe the next person you consider easily replaceable will benefit from this lesson." I walked out of her office and never looked back. 6 months later, Stone Strategic Solutions had grown to 12 employees and was managing over $30 million in annual client business. 4 of Global Tech's largest European clients had transitioned to working with us directly, while 3 others had reduced their contracts with Global Tech by more than 60%. Linda Martinez was quietly transferred to a different division 3 months after my departure. The European division struggled for 8 months before stabilizing at roughly half their previous revenue. Michael Chen, the VP who had looked so panicked during our final meeting, was eventually promoted to replace Linda. Apparently, corporate leadership concluded that the HR department needed someone who better understood the actual value of their employees. As for me, I learned something valuable about corporate dynamics that I'll never forget. The most dangerous assumption any company can make is that competence equals compliance, that quiet excellence means someone has no other options. They thought I was easily replaceable because I'd never threatened to leave, never caused drama, never demanded attention. They confused loyalty with desperation and competence with compliance. In their minds, someone who did excellent work without creating problems was someone who had nowhere else to go. They were wrong about that. Spectacularly, expensively wrong. The irony is that Linda Martinez was partially right about one thing. I wasn't irreplaceable. Global Tech survived my departure, eventually rebuilt their European relationships, and continued operating as a successful company. But what she failed to understand was that being replaceable doesn't mean being worthless, and it certainly doesn't mean you should treat people as if they are. What happened next, however, would prove that some people never learn from their mistakes. They just find new ways to make them worse. 6 months after my departure, Stone Strategic Solutions was thriving beyond my wildest expectations. We'd just signed our 15th client, a renewable energy consortium that brought our annual revenue to $38 million. I was reviewing quarterly projections in my corner office. Yes, the corner office I'd never been offered at Global Tech, when my assistant knocked on the door. "Rebecca, there's something you need to see," Sarah said, her expression troubled. She handed me a tablet displaying an industry forum where professionals discussed market trends and company reputations. The thread that caught my attention had Linda Martinez's digital fingerprints all over it, though she was too smart to post directly. Anonymous accounts were spreading rumors about Stone Strategic Solutions, claims about unethical client poaching, suggestions that I'd violated confidentiality agreements, and innuendos about my business practices that were crafted just carefully enough to avoid outright defamation. "How long has this been going on?" I asked, scrolling through weeks of coordinated posts. "At least a month, maybe longer. It's subtle, but it's definitely a campaign. The language patterns suggest a single source, probably someone with HR training who understands legal boundaries." I leaned back in my chair, feeling a familiar coldness settle in my chest. Linda hadn't learned her lesson about underestimating me. If anything, she'd doubled down on her original mistake. That afternoon, I called James Morrison at Morrison & Associates. James was not only a client, but also a former litigation attorney who'd transitioned to business consulting. "James, I need some advice about reputation management and potential defamation," I said after explaining the situation. "Rebecca, this is interesting timing," James replied. "I've been hearing whispers in the industry about Global Tech's aggressive approach to former employees. You're not the only one they've targeted." "What do you mean?" 3 other former Global Tech employees who started competing businesses have experienced similar campaigns. Anonymous forum posts, subtle client warnings, carefully worded concerns about their integrity. It's professional sabotage, but it's sophisticated. The pieces clicked into place. This wasn't just about me. It was Linda's systematic attempt to destroy anyone who dared to leave Global Tech successfully. She was trying to create a narrative that leaving the company led to ethical compromises and business failures. "James, I want to explore legal options, but I also want to understand the full scope of what they're doing. I know someone who can help with that. Digital investigation specialist, former FBI Cyber Division. If there's a coordinated campaign against you and others, she'll find the evidence." 2 weeks later, I sat in a secure conference room with James, digital investigator Dr. Amanda Chen, no relation to Michael Chen from Global Tech, and my newly retained attorney, Patricia Valdez. The evidence spread across the table was damning. "The digital footprint is clear," Dr. Chen explained, pointing to network analysis charts. "All of these accounts trace back to IP addresses associated with Global Tech's corporate network. The posting patterns align with Linda Martinez's work schedule, and the linguistic analysis shows consistent vocabulary and phrasing patterns that match her known writing samples from company communications." Patricia leaned forward. "This goes beyond defamation. If they're using company resources to systematically damage former employees' reputations, we're looking at tortious interference with business relationships, potentially criminal cyber harassment, and clear violations of several employment law statutes. But here's the interesting part," Dr. Chen continued. "Linda Martinez wasn't working alone. The campaign required coordination with Global Tech's legal department to stay just within the bounds of plausible deniability. And the timing of these posts correlates with Global Tech's business development activities. They're timing the reputation attacks to coincide with their own pitches to your former clients." I felt that familiar ice-cold clarity wash over me. Linda had escalated our personal conflict into corporate warfare, and she'd been stupid enough to leave a digital paper trail. "What are our options?" I asked Patricia. "Legally? We have enough evidence for a substantial lawsuit that could result in significant damages and injunctive relief. But Rebecca, I think you should consider the nuclear option, which is a comprehensive legal assault that doesn't just target Linda Martinez personally, but exposes Global Tech's systematic harassment of former employees. We make this public, we make it expensive, and we make it impossible for them to continue these practices. James nodded approvingly. The industry needs to know what they're doing. Other professionals are being victimized by this same strategy. I made my decision. Let's do it. But I want to be strategic about timing and messaging. If we're going to war, we're going to win decisively. The lawsuit we filed 3 weeks later was a masterpiece of legal strategy. Patricia had crafted claims that addressed not just the defamation against me, but a pattern of corporate misconduct that affected multiple former employees. We named Linda Martinez personally, Global Tech as a corporate defendant, and several other executives who had knowledge of or participated in the harassment campaign. But the real genius was in our public relations strategy. Instead of simply filing and waiting, we coordinated with a prominent business journalist who had been investigating toxic corporate culture in the consulting industry. Our lawsuit became the centerpiece of a major exposé titled The Price of Leaving: How One Company Weaponized HR Against Former Employees. The article, published simultaneously with our lawsuit filing, detailed not just my experience, but similar patterns affecting 7 other former Global Tech employees. It included the digital evidence Dr. Chen had uncovered, quotes from clients who confirmed they'd received subtle warnings about former Global Tech employees, and expert commentary on the legal and ethical implications of using corporate resources to damage individual reputations. The response was immediate and devastating for Global Tech. Within 48 hours, the hashtag #RJAR Global Tech Retaliation was trending on professional social media. Current and former employees began sharing their own stories of toxic management, retaliatory behavior, and ethical concerns. 3 major clients publicly announced they were reviewing their vendor relationships with Global Tech. The company's stock price dropped 12% in one day. Linda Martinez was placed on administrative leave pending an internal investigation. But that was just the beginning. 2 months into the legal battle, Patricia received a call that changed everything. "Rebecca, you need to sit down for this," she said during our weekly strategy meeting. "Global Tech wants to settle, but it's not just about money. They want to discuss something much bigger." "How much bigger?" "They want to sell you their European division." I stared at her. "I'm sorry, what?" "According to their attorneys, the European division has never recovered from your departure. They're operating at a 63% revenue loss compared to pre-departure numbers. And the legal costs from our lawsuit, combined with the ongoing reputation damage, have made the division unsustainable. They want to know if Stone Strategic Solutions would be interested in acquiring the assets, client contracts, and staff of Global Tech's European operations." The audacity of it was breathtaking. The same company that had told me I was easily replaceable now wanted to sell me the very division I'd helped build. "What kind of numbers are we talking about?" I asked. "They're suggesting a price of $8.5 million for assets that were generating $52 million in annual revenue when you were there. It's essentially a fire sale." I laughed, actually laughed out loud. "They want me to buy back my own work for a fraction of its value?" "There's more," Patricia continued. "The deal would include a comprehensive settlement of all legal claims, public acknowledgement of wrongdoing, and, here's the interesting part, retention of current European division staff, including some people you might find familiar." That evening, I called Marcus Weber to discuss the situation. Marcus had become not just a client, but a trusted advisor as my business grew. "Rebecca, this is poetic justice," he said after I explained Global Tech's offer. "They destroy their own division trying to punish you, then offer to sell it back to you at a bargain price. You would own everything they tried to keep from you. But is it smart business? $8.5 million is a significant investment. My friend, you already have $30 million in annual revenue. The European division's client base, even at reduced capacity, is worth at least $20 million annually once properly managed. You would be buying assets worth potentially $80 million for less than $9 million. and you would be preventing global tech from ever rebuilding that market presence. The strategic implications were staggering. Acquiring Global Tech's European division wouldn't just expand Stone's strategic solutions, it would eliminate our largest potential competitor in the European market, while adding their existing client relationships to our portfolio. But there was something even more satisfying about the deal. 3 weeks later, I sat in a conference room at Global Tech's headquarters for the acquisition closing. The same building where Linda Martinez had told me I was easily replaceable now hosted a meeting where I was purchasing a significant portion of the company. Michael Chen, now serving as interim head of European operations, led the Global Tech delegation. He looked exhausted, older than when I'd last seen him, and there was a resignation in his demeanor that spoke to months of trying to rebuild what my departure had destroyed. "Rebecca," he said as we reviewed the final contracts, "I want you to know that we've learned from this experience. The way you were treated was unacceptable, and the company has implemented new policies to prevent similar situations." "I appreciate that, Michael. But policy changes don't address fundamental cultural issues. Respect isn't something you can mandate. It's something you either practice or you don't." The irony became even richer when Patricia handed me the employee transition documents. As part of the acquisition, Stone Strategic Solutions would be inheriting 43 European division employees, including their management structure. And there, on page 7 of the personnel list, was a name that made me smile: Linda Martinez. After her administrative leave had ended, Linda had been quietly transferred to the European division as a senior HR coordinator, essentially a demotion disguised as a lateral move. Now, through this acquisition, she would technically be working for the woman she'd once dismissed as easily replaceable. I looked up at Michael. "I assume all employees will have the option to transition to Stone Strategic Solutions or accept severance packages." "That's correct. We're hoping most will choose to stay, given the uncertainty they've faced over the past year." "And what about Linda Martinez?" Michael's expression became carefully neutral. "Linda's situation is complex. She's expressed interest in remaining with the organization, but we understand if you have concerns about that arrangement." I thought for a moment. Linda Martinez working for me, even indirectly, had a poetic justice that was almost irresistible. But more importantly, it would be a daily reminder to everyone in the organization about the consequences of underestimating people. "She can stay," I said finally, "but she'll be subject to the same performance standards and cultural expectations as everyone else. No special treatment, positive or negative." 6 months after the acquisition, Stone Strategic Solutions had become the dominant strategic consulting firm in the European market, with annual revenue of $72 million and a staff of 89 professionals across 12 countries. Linda Martinez had indeed chosen to stay with the company. She worked diligently, professionally, and without complaint in her new role. During our few interactions, she maintained perfect corporate courtesy, and I did the same. Neither of us ever directly acknowledged our history, but everyone understood the dynamics at play. The real satisfaction wasn't in Linda's presence, though. It was in what her presence represented. Every day, her continued employment served as a reminder to the entire organization that actions have consequences, that treating people poorly can backfire in spectacular ways, and that underestimating someone can literally make them your boss. The business world took notice. Harvard Business School wrote a case study about the acquisition. Industry publications called it the revenge acquisition and analyzed its implications for employee retention and corporate culture. I was invited to speak at conferences about leadership, strategic thinking, and the hidden value of organizational relationships. But the most satisfying moment came during our first annual company meeting as the expanded Stone Strategic Solutions. Standing before nearly 100 employees, including several former global tech managers who had once overlooked my contributions, I addressed the culture we were building. Success, I told them, isn't just about numbers or market dominance. It's about recognizing value wherever it exists, treating people with respect regardless of their position, and understanding that loyalty is earned, not assumed. Some companies learn these lessons the hard way. Others learn them the expensive way. A few, unfortunately, never learn them at all. In the back of the room, Linda Martinez sat quietly, taking notes. She'd learned, finally, that the person you dismiss as easily replaceable might just be the person who ends up replacing you. The woman who had once told me I wasn't special now worked for a company I'd built from nothing, in an industry I'd come to dominate, serving clients who had followed me from the job where I'd been deemed worthless. Sometimes the best revenge isn't getting even, it's getting everything,